Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. Today, we're talking about Grand Prix Vegas, the most infamous foil Goyf and its aftermath, Magic making its way mainstream, one of the most colorful players you've probably never heard of, and a question of historical value. So, we're going to get started, as we all do, by introducing my two co-hosts, Reuben Bressler, who's amused, and Erin Campbell, who's also amused, because we're here to have a good time.
I can never... It's the voice from the TV. It's so good.
It's what I do.
It's great. I love it.
It's how I do things. And we're going to
right.
kick off this week, as we always do, with the first pick. Now, we're going to discuss first the largest Grand Prix in the history of all time ever. Grand Prix Vegas from this past weekend. So, Erin, tell me, you guys actually went. I did not go, which is going to let us talk about something here in a minute. But you guys went. So, Erin, tell me how it went. How was your experience at Grand Prix Vegas?
Man, it was definitely the most fun I've ever had losing. Like, I didn't do very well in the main event, but I had so much fun just being there and the parties and being recognized and being around, my friends and my family, for lack of a better word, that I didn't even care. Like, I've gone on record as saying that I have a tilting problem, that I don't like to lose, and I had the most fun losing. Like, I just met so many awesome people where it just didn't even faze me. And it was a very positive experience from top to bottom, and I felt it was run very well. Like, I felt like there weren't I went into it with sort of low standards in terms of how it was going to be run. Like, I expected the events to take a while, and I expected certain things to happen, and I just felt like that did happen, but I felt like they adapted very quickly to things where the problems that I experienced didn't stay problems all weekend long. And it was just enjoyable from top to bottom. I even had fun waiting in line for artists, like, just because I was running into like-minded people. And I just can't say enough about it. I'm so glad that I went. And I felt a little bad by the last day. Like, I was so tired that I was emotional. I don't know if you've ever had that happen, where you just start blabbering. And I know by Sunday, I was just like, I have nothing left to give. Like, because for the first 3 days, it was like, I got there, you go straight to a party, and then you get up the next morning, you go to the venue, you play for so many hours, and then you're at another party, you go to bed, and then repeat. And by Sunday, my friends were like, you've got one more party to go to. And I was like, I can't. Like, I have nothing. I just want to sit in my room and eat Chinese and watch Forensic Files. I was like, I cannot give you any more. And I was just so exhausted by Sunday. And then I felt bad because there were people I still didn't get to see. And even though I did so much, there was an even longer list of things I didn't get to do. And yeah, but I'm really glad I went. It was an amazing experience. And I hate to sound cheesy, but I'll never forget it.
You'll treasure it always.
Yeah, really.
So, Reuben, tell me what it was like to just walk into this ridiculously huge space.
Boy, it was impressive. I'd never been to the Westgate hotel, and I'd never been to the Las Vegas Convention Center. It was massive. It was built for events larger than this, and it was a sight to behold. I walked in and couldn't believe just how big it was. And I walked in on Thursday, and one of the judges that I'm talking to says, we're opening up the other wing once the GP gets started, right? And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? This isn't all of it? And he's like, no, we got like 2/3 of it, but we're opening up the rest once the event gets started. And I'm like, I have to lie down. Like, it was just too much. It was crazy. There was like 30 artists, 30 dealer booths, like 5 stages or something ridiculous like that.
Bleachers to watch movies on?
Yeah, there were bleachers.
Wow.
There were like 4 different food courts around of various types.
Wow.
It was insane how many people were there at all hours of the day, basically. Like, you could show up at noon on Thursday and the place would be, half full. It was insane. Given how massive of a project it was, I knew that it wasn't going to go off, perfectly. You know how hard it is to run a GP.
I know exactly how hard it is.
Yeah, you know exactly how hard it is to run a GP. Now try running 2 GPs and a con, right, at the same time in the same building. Yeah. It's never going to be perfect. However, with what they had, they did great. I was pleasantly surprised by how well everything was going. To be fair, I didn't stand in side event lines. which I heard were a nightmare. But other than that, I thought that the main event went pretty well, smoothly. I had a sleep-in special. Getting my pool was a little bit of a cluster because how many people have sleep-in specials? It's ridiculous. But other than that, I thought that the rounds were announced clearly. The side event drafts were well done. Everything was clearly marked. They had matching tablecloths for whatever section of the room you were in. So if you were in the Nissa flight, then you had green tablecloths. If you were in the Chandra flight, you had red tablecloths. And,
nice.
Like Tarmogoyf had the same tablecloths as Nissa, but they're on opposite sides of the room. So it was pretty cool how that was set up. And the artists were all in like a pretty centralized location, which I really like, having the artists as centralized as possible. Because sometimes they get passed over by people. But if you see, that Steve Argyle and Christopher Rush are there, then you're going to wander over and at least take a look. Right. As opposed to like putting them, far away by the food courts or something like that. So I thought that it was great. I had a ton of fun. The fact that it was attached to a casino was nice for a lot of folks. And like Saturday night after the day one, I went to the poker room in the Westgate, and there are 2 tables, and 60% of the players were people I recognized, which was hilarious. So I just hung out. Hung out and played some cards and had some drinks with T-Pup and like Casey Brefka and some of the other guys that I don't get to see a lot. That are sort of in a different part of the Magic community than I'm in. And my main event also didn't go great. I 6-3'd, I bubbled, but I got to cast Emrakul in my sealed deck 3 times, which was sweet. Yeah,
that's sweet.
My deck was hilarious. I built it and was like, you know what, this is probably wrong, but it's fun. So I'm gonna do it, and I did, and people were always surprised when they were like, "Did you put Emrakul in your sealed deck?" And I'm like, and it probably killed me more times than I killed my opponents with it by just having it in my hand and having 12 mana, being mana flooded, and still being 3 lands short of casting this card in my hand. But it was a ton of fun, and I can't wait for the next enormous 12,000 people in a tournament hall GP, because even though it was kind of ridiculous, it was ridiculous in the best way possible.
That's fantastic.
One thing I definitely want to say is it was surprising to me how many people had already listened to our show in the short time that I'd been there. Like, I think we released it on a Thursday, yeah?
I uploaded the archives on Thursday, yes.
Okay, so my flight landed at 4:30 p.m. and I had done like a lap around the venue just because I got there and I wanted to see everything. And in that initial lap, I had people coming up to me and saying, "Are you Erin Campbell from MagicMics?" And I'm like,
"Nice.
I haven't even seen it yet. Like, what's going on?" And they were so interested, and they were like, "Man, you 3 are just amazing." And one thing I just keep coming back to was the love that I got shown this weekend from other content providers and from listeners and even from total strangers. Like, I was just blown away by how positive it was. Like, I was really not expecting that.
I had a guy come up to me at the GP on Thursday, I think. He came up to me and said, "I listened to your podcast and I wasn't planning on playing in the main event, but listening to the preview where I said that you're almost certainly not going to be the worst player in the room got him to sign up for the main event." And I was like, that's absurd. Why would my opinion change your mind on that? But that's awesome. I love that. I have the power.
You can influence people?
I have, and change minds and move mountains. Dude. So it was surprising how many people had already listened to it by the time we got in there, and it's just awesome to feel the love. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And so on Sunday night, I am hanging out, chilling with the fam. Look up Twitter, and they're like, "Oh my God, he took a foil Goyf," and I'm like, "Who took a foil Goyf?" And then someone else is just like, "He took the foil Goyf, and then he took the foil Goyf. Did you see that? Pascal Maynard's in the top 8. He drafted a foil Goyf over his burst lightning. Why did he do this?" And then there was just like this huge wave, and it just kept coming. And then all of a sudden there was this huge reaction to it, and then there was this huge pro reaction to it. And it was like, what happened? So to kind of recap what was happening, and feel free to correct me if I have any of these details wrong, but he was drafting a red-white deck.
Yes.
And he opens in pack 2 a foil Goyf and a burst lightning. And obviously one of those is better for his deck than the other one. However, one of those is worth a whole bunch of money, and one of them is a common. So there was that moment, and he had 60 seconds to figure this out. There was a 60-second window for him to say, do I take this basically $1,000 bill? Like, yes, a normal foil Goyf is $350, but this one is top 8 of the largest GP of all time. Stamped. That is an incredibly rare thing. Just absolutely, I think maybe one other foil Tarmogoyf has opened over the weekend with a stamp. But regardless, he took the foil Goyf, and the internet went completely nuts. And it became basically what I would describe as the entire narrative leaving the event. And I mean, in some ways that's bad because, you know, the narrative wasn't, oh my God, it was great. Everyone had so much fun. Like, can you believe this thing happened? So many gamers in one spot. No, it was, oh my God, he picked the foil Goyf. And then there became that sort of explanation of Pascal Maynard is very close in the running for Worlds, very close for locking Platinum. Why would he make his deck worse and not try to do as best he could to get as many pro points as he can? Because the pro points, if he wins this, you know, just back of the envelope math, as a lot of people were saying, you know, he was turning down up to $30,000 to $40,000 in benefits.
What I love about this is that Pascal, not only was it like, this is the hypothetical situation that you would have imagined, right?
Yeah.
It's not even just someone opens a foil Goyf in the top 8 of a GP. It's the guy who's second in GP points. He is 1 point behind Hain for GP points leader.
Right.
For the world slot.
Right.
He is the test case.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Perfect.
So good.
It was so perfect. And so he's got this, like, you know, he's got the red-white double strike deck. He got a couple late Viashino Slaughtermasters in pack 1. His deck's coming together, but he doesn't have any kill spells yet. He doesn't have any way to deal with opposing, you know, 3/3s yet. Right. And he opens his pack, and he's got a $1,000 bill, and he's got the best common that he could have opened, right? It's arguable he would have rather had a Bolt or a, you know, an Oblivion Ring, right?
Sure.
But if we're not being picky, then it's like that or Arrest are the cards we want. And Burst Lightning's the cheaper one, so it's the better one.
Right.
Burst Lightning's just great in this set in general. You can also just go face with it when you have the double strike deck.
Exactly.
And so he's faced with a decision. Do I take the card, the common that I would want to open, or $1,000?
All right, so let's start on level 0. Level 0 is... level 0 is just as a player who wants to do well. If you're in this position and you have this option, what do you do? Do you take the Goyf or do you take the Burst Lightning? Let's just run that one first.
Personally?
I'm asking us personally. Aaron, tell me what you would do.
I mean, at that point, you know, I'm well aware of the fact that I'm not. We're talking about like my current status in this game.
You can frame it however you want to frame it. It's really about your take on the decision.
As somebody who is not very good at this game, for lack of a better word, if I was already in the top 8, which I'm assuming comes with a Pro Tour invite, and I can get a little bacon on my cheeseburger too, I'm going to take the Goyf. Like, what I would be, you know, because that would have already defied all of my expectations, where it's like, you know, I get all of these things, which in my opinion is far beyond my wildest dreams as your everyday player, your everyday grinder. And I don't see a problem with that, especially knowing how difficult it is to even get to that point and knowing how it all can go away in an instant. Why not have a little insurance? I mean, I would have done it, me personally, from where I am right now.
Okay. Reuben?
Yeah.
You just snap take it?
Yeah. So, you know, it's a super interesting discussion because where I am in my life right now, making top 8 is where I want to be. I've checkpoint reached. We did it, right? I'm on the Pro Tour. I've added. If I had been in top 8, it would be my first ever Grand Prix top 8. That's hooray! We did it, everybody. And we have this other thing, which is super nice, and I get to, you know, pay rent with it. I don't need the prize money to pay rent now, right? I just got this other thing,
right?
Which is sweet.
All right, so
if I'm better than I am. I mean, there's a line at which you take the Burst Lightning. There's a line at which you know, if you're the number 1 ranked player in the world or the number 2 ranked player in the world, you take the Burst Lightning because the potential percentage points that you gain from having the Burst Lightning in your deck rather than the Tarmogoyf in your trade binder adds more value to your life. But I am not at that bar. I don't know where that bar is. So for me personally, it's the Goyf.
I'm kind of just like an old school like Spike. I know. Evan's bad at Magic. I get it. I know the narrative, but like, I play to win. I am a very competitive person. And at some point I realized my time was better spent documenting the game than playing the game, but it doesn't matter. The point is I always take the chance that lets me win. So like I would have taken the burst lightning, just me. That's just me. I'm not saying I am taking it as Pascal. I'm saying that like if it was me, I want
you're not
to win.
wrong.
I just want to win. I just like to win, and I know it's a shiny thing, and I know it's a bunch of money, and it's going to be. And it cracks me up. Like, you know, what do we feel would have happened if he had actually passed it? Well, I don't think there would have been any sort of like controversy. I think there would have been a lot of sort of like self gratification / boasting amongst the pro community of just like, this is how you do it. This was an example of passing that EV because you're trying to do the best you can. And if he still lost in the semis, there would have been none of this uproar. And so to move into our next segment, into the red zone, I want to talk about the uproar because there was an uproar that happened most notably between three personalities, which is the Peach Garden Oath, which is Huey Jensen, Reid Duke, and Owen Turtenwald, which they came out very vehemently against the decision. You know, I've lost respect for you. It's just, you know, it's terrible, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you know, how could you do these things and whatnot? And, you know, as a result, it just kind of, I think it took a lot of people by surprise. They were like, oh my God, you know, like what these guys, not just like any guys, like the guys, some of the biggest pros that there are, one of the biggest teams whenever they play trios, like these guys are coming out real strong against him. And that was a very sort of shocking moment. And I want to talk about sort of, you know, how did you guys, did you guys sort of have that or follow that live? Was that something that you saw happen?
Yeah, that was hard for me because I love Reid. I affectionately refer to Reid as Bay. I have our imaginary children's names already picked out. I know what Ultra Pro sleeves we're going to use for them. I mean, I love Reid. Reid is the one player in the world where if he tells me to play a deck, I'm going to play it. Like, that's how closely I follow him. He's the one person in this world where I would consider playing mono red if he told me to. Wow. I wouldn't actually do it, but I would strongly
consider it. Yeah,
consider it. If anybody else said it, absolutely not. It was very hard for me to see that because I do love Reid so much, and to see such strong words be used, it was very shocking to me because I feel like there are pros that people enjoy because they are sort of the everyman, or you do feel like you could be them, and then there are those pros who sort of get so far removed where they seem almost alien to you, where it's like they just can't relate to the everyday grinder. And I feel like what Pascal did, I didn't really see any non-pros have a problem with it. They loved it. They were like, yes, that's what I would do. Like, that is me up there. And then you had these three that were so far above, and I really feel like they did sort of create a wedge between them and the folks like me, where it did sort of make them look at them differently. Like, you're not one of us anymore. Like, I do feel like it changed something. It changed the dynamic between them in a way that hadn't before. It really did make people look at Reid differently and look at Huey differently. And, you know, Owen's had always been sort of controversial, so I don't think that changed his opinion or people's opinion of him necessarily, but people definitely looked at Reid and Huey differently, and I was one of them. And I was like, Reid, no, and I'm still kind of torn over it. I'm still like,
Reuben, how do you feel about it?
Well, okay, we're going to stay in the part of history where they have not done their responses
Correct.
To the initial.
This is the initial. You saw them come out.
I saw the tweet that
hard.
says, "You disgust me," right? I believe was the exact quote. That was tough. That was a tough thing to see. Not completely unexpected, but tough. I think that your point about there being a little bit of a, you know, you're not a normal person anymore has some truth to it. I think that the initial responses were a little harsh. You can make your opinions known and make your feelings felt without being quite so strong. However, Twitter is a harsh mistress, and sometimes your words come back and bite you. In this particular case, I don't think that it was like, I don't think that people are going to stop being fans of any of the guys as a result of their opinions. It just went like, oh, their priorities are different than mine. And then they move on. Like, maybe you disagree with them, but I don't think that anybody's opinions of them are changed. Perhaps the tone could have been better. but I don't think my opinion of any of the guys is any different based on their initial gut reactions. Again, Pascal had 60 seconds to make a decision. They had 60 seconds to write a tweet. We're all in the same boat here, right? We're all in this together. So I think that, you know, once they had some more time to think about it, once they had some time to discuss it with their friends, once they saw how the actual situation was handled after the event, which I'm sure we'll get to in just a minute, then they changed their minds. And I think that, you know, smart people, when given new information, are able to reevaluate. And that's what happened here.
Yeah. And I also feel like I don't know if we're quite there yet, but I also feel like the apologies were genuine. It wasn't an "I'm sorry, you're sorry," or it wasn't an "I'm sorry if you're offended." It was "I'm sorry, period." And that to me sold it. It was a true apology. It wasn't a faux apology. It was real.
There's nothing worse than the "I'm sorry that you're offended" type thing. That's the weird kind of like, you know, but I'm still kind of right. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's not how that came across. And I tell all those guys were genuine. And it feels like, and I've seen this happen because I've been around pro culture, I've been around pro tour players. They talk with their buddies, and their buddies were like, dude, you really kind of like
overstepped a little.
Yeah, you just kind of railed on the guy, maybe a little too much. And part of it was on the decision, and part of it was on, again, I think sort of this idea of the integrity of the pro player, and that they can't be tainted with the shiny whatever dangling in front of them. It's like, I don't care what's in that pack. I'm going to take the best card for my deck because that's what I do. I'm a pro player and I'm there to do the best I can and show the world you do the best. It doesn't matter what is dangled in front of you.
Yep.
So
this was all that the pro circuit was talking about the next day. This was all that they were talking about. They were coming up with other hypotheticals about, well, where's the line here? Where's the line here? Trying to be like, well, is there a gray area for you? Or is it 100%? You always, you know, take the proverbial burst lightning over the proverbial Tarmogoyf. It was all consuming for a day and a half, which is not something that happens a lot in the Magic community.
Not really.
I also saw the conversation splinter off into discussions about how much the payouts were, and that maybe if the GP payouts were better, this wouldn't have been a factor. Where if he was getting enough to be top 8 and to possibly win it, he wouldn't have even blinked at, oh, what's a $500, $1,000 Goyf when I'm getting better winnings. But I enjoyed that conversation because I do feel it's a valid point that you know the prize
that tweet, by the way, was that thought was introduced by your BFF Kai, who tweeted, "This weekend the ratio of entry fee versus tournament payout for Magic the Gathering Grand Prix was 1.6 million to 216K. Sure hope a lot of these packs had Tarmogoyfs," which then led to a bigger, longer discussion. That tweet had 66 retweets and 110 favorites. So that was seen by a lot of the community.
Right. Well, the other one that was along that vein was Alexanderhain himself, the guy who is fighting with Pascal, says, "I hope for a world where cash prizes are such that no one even considers picking a $1,000 card." That was 53 retweets, 157 favorites. Like that is a serious, like, you know, impact in terms of like he himself is just like, you know, if that had never been a factor, you know, it was, again, that to me, I think there's a lot of like pride in the integrity of the pro community and the integrity of those players, and the fact that, like, you know, they're doing it for real and there's no weird outside forces, and this is kind of a weird outside force that impacted a very important tournament, a very important top 8. And if, you know, and like, you know, everyone's just like, well, League of Legends is paying out DI, and, you know, like, what's going on with Hearthstone and yada yada, and it's like, and these payouts haven't changed since XYZ, and even though they have changed a little bit, you know, I think there's that sort of discussion of, you know, at one part it became like, should Wizards put $1,000 cards or, you know, $500 cards, $600 cards or whatever in this manner? You know, they know Goyf is worth $150 just retail. Should they make it a rare, for example? Should they try to bring it down so where there's not that insane leap? And then the other half is, are these prize payouts really enough to make, you know, being a pro actually happen, actually worth it? And that's a discussion I think everyone there's no really good answers on it, because it's basically just like, can you please give us more money? We would really appreciate it if you would just give us more money.
Sure.
My final thought on this would be the following. If you're a professional Magic the Gathering player, that means you make a living playing Magic. Part of your income is given to you in sealed pools and draft packs. That's just a fact of how the game works. So he randomly opened another part of his prize pool. That's how I look at it. A lot of people will disagree with that, but that's how I look at it, is that if you win the Goyf lottery, if you happen to win it in the top 8 draft, that's just when you happen to win it.
Yeah.
I mean, my parting thought on this is from Martin Juza, who asked Pascal, he said, would you pay $500 to have Burst Lightning in your deck? And he's like, nope. And so there you go. There's your decision right there.
The person who stood out to me actually was Brad Nelson. He, I feel like I'm just plugging SCG because you're here, but no, really, I do feel like
I like Brad. Brad's awesome. I like to work with him every 2 or 3 months, and it's fantastic.
I love Brad too. Now that I unblocked him from Twitter, but it's a good story. You should hear it sometime. Anyways, so they did a Fact or Fiction, which is a new column that you guys are doing, and it was Todd Anderson and Brad, and you asked them what their thoughts were on the Tarmogoyf thing, and Brad's thoughts just really hit me where I live. And if I can just quote what he said, because I thought it was really marvelous.
Sure.
He basically said that he said, I'm a terrible drafter and would most likely not have made day 2 of the Grand Prix. I would probably be indulging in one of the amazing shows in Las Vegas, or playing Pai Gow with some friends around that time on Sunday. Since I would not be in that situation myself, I don't believe that I am in any position to decide whether Pascal was correct to take the money or not. I guess I will just trust the actions of someone that was deserving of being in that position to make the correct decision for themselves instead of projecting my own wants and needs on another individual. And I was like,
done,
Brad Nelson, like, you better work. Like, that was everything. That was it.
That's the smartest thing I've ever heard Brad say.
Oh.
Wow.
Is it? I mean, that's
it's very smart.
Perfect.
It's very well said.
But it was true. Like, it was, and I wish more people would take that stance. You know, without getting on too big of a soapbox, I do feel like there are a lot of topics that come out there where people. I wish more people would say, you know what, I am not qualified to speak on this, so I'm just not going to. Like, I feel like
we're on a podcast. We have to do it.
We kind of. It's if we don't, then
it's our jobs to do it.
We're failing. All these people are watching us right now. They're just like,
how boring would the show have been? If we were like, so what do you think about Goyfgate? I'm not in a position.
I don't know how magic cards work. I don't know. Right. I was just looking at things.
For those who aren't in the position to be talking heads on the Twitter box, you know, it's certainly it's a great sentiment, and that's an awesome thing to have out.
It's a very sort of political non-answer in some ways, but it's also a very smart answer when you don't want to try to vilify or try to justify or try to figure out your reasoning as to why or how, and that's fine. That's totally fine. So, and I agree. It's a very fantastically well said, smart thing from Brad. So we're going to move on. So another thing that's kind of tangential to GP Vegas, which we go through the splash damage segment, which splash damage is for when things happen that aren't necessarily from Wizards or from any direct kind of, you know, tournament organizer or whatever. It's kind of outside Magic, but it always relates to Magic. And to that, we talk about the Rolling Stone article where, you know, someone wrote inside the world's biggest Magic the Gathering tournament, and they kind of, I don't know about undercover, but they certainly sort of went there, they played so they could write this article for Rolling Stone, and they talked about their feelings. And I thought it was really sweet to see us, you know, well, and by us, I mean, you know, like I have such ownership, like, feeling of the game and the community. Like, this is like how we project to the world, like something that isn't bad, something that isn't negative. It was all positive. It was all really cool. Check out all this cool stuff. He had a great time. I thought that was totally sweet. He used Joey Pasco's photos to get.
It was great.
Joey
Shout
Pasco.
Out to Joey.
Yes.
Well done. And also to Christine Sprankle, who was in the photo.
Yes. Right.
Well done, both of you. Your Rolling Stone debut.
That's amazing. So yeah. I'm super proud of those guys, you know, and I love the fact that we're able to kind of support Joey Pasco and his great work. Christine Sprankle has all these fans all over the world. Like, Wizards at this point just takes her everywhere because she does a great job, and she has all the cool costumes. And I mean, heck, we're taking her to Charlotte next weekend, so that'll be fun too. But yeah, you know, like that was to me was a really cool moment in Magic history to kind of note that, like, hey, we're in a Rolling Stone article about something that's super good, super positive. There's nothing weird or bad about it. It's all great, and it was awesome to sort of see that being highlighted in that way.
Yep, I think that's the most important thing, is that this article was in Rolling Stone, which is, you know, that's fine, that's great, but it had nothing negative.
Yeah.
The last big news stories that were Magic related were Crackgate, which was a dude posing in front of butt cracks, and like Finkel's OkCupid thing, where, you know, that was a couple years ago. I don't even know if people remember that, but it certainly wasn't great. for the Magic community, and they just, they made these stereotypes even, more ingrained into the culture and exacerbated problems that we already had.
Right.
This didn't do that. This shined a nice light on Magic.
Right.
I think the thing I appreciated most about the article was that it was accessible to people who don't play Magic. One of the things that I've struggled with is not telling people that I play, but really explaining it. Like, I have coworkers who think that I do magic tricks.
Yeah.
Like, when I told them I was going to Vegas, they're like, "Oh, are you performing?" And I'm like, "No."
You're gonna need some rabbits.
Like, I have hook, like I have
Yeah.
rings or something, and I'm going to put them together. And
Yeah.
and I try to draw parallels to, like, oh, well, do you watch Game of Thrones, like that,
Yeah.
but on cards, and that doesn't really go well. But
Yeah.
it did a really good job of, we could understand this as Magic players. Like, it wasn't something where we were like, oh, this is so dumbed down, they don't play Magic. But I also felt like we could read it and enjoy it as Magic players, and maybe we could show this to our loved ones and say, this is where I was, and they would understand everything, and maybe that would open the discourse about that. So I thought that was great.
Yeah. With that said, this particular article sounded like it was just a guy who was in Vegas for his bachelor party, right? Like, I'm reading the article and it's like, I mean, he just decided to write an article while he was here,
Sure.
which is great. I love it, but
I mean, maybe
I'll
it
take
was like the chocolate and peanut butter, right? Like, he writes a Rolling
I'll
Stone.
take what I can get.
He'll be in Vegas. I don't care. We're in Rolling Stone. Cool people are being highlighted. The Magic community looks great. The game looks great. That's sort of what we want in this world. And
The fact that the world's largest poker tournament took place on the same weekend
Nice.
as the world's largest Magic tournament, and the Magic tournament got the Rolling Stone article, I think speaks volumes to how far the community can be presented, and can we don't have to stay in our basements. I mean, obviously we're not all in our basements. That's not a thing, but we someday maybe we won't have to explain what Magic the Gathering is to our friends and family.
there's this feeling like I have right now. So we're kind of barreling towards the movie. The movie is going to be huge. If it sucks for all of us. And if it's great, it's going to absolutely blow up the game in ways that we have never seen before. We will easily get a 20,000 person player tournament if that movie is good. Because if that movie is good, all of a sudden you have like sort of you'll have a cultural milestone in terms of all these people who had no idea what Magic was, or only heard about it, or only saw some nerd in high school play it one time and they don't care about it. Well, all of a sudden there's all these cool characters and they relate to it, and there's special effects, and maybe the script is really good, or it was directed well, or had a great set piece, and they want to sort of feel that and experience that and figure out what this Magic thing is all about. And as a result, the game just goes, so like this to me is another one of those, like, when we're going to go back and we're going to see like before Magic like really exploded, which I absolutely believe is the movie, like we're going to sort of say, okay, and this happened, and then this Rolling Stone article happened, and then that NPR episode happened about Black Lotus. Like those little things, just like we just crept and we crept and we crept, and then like the movie came and it was great, and then we're here, and that's awesome, and that's what I am really looking forward to.
Absolutely, checkpoint reached.
Nice.
Yeah, it's definitely something I look forward to as a content creator, where it's like, I want a piece of that pie.
Yeah, man. I'll if they want to call me up and do some if they need to know what some flavor text on some cards are, they can call me up, and they don't need that. They have professionals already.
I mean, it's the rising tide raises all boats theory. It's like, because when Magic gets huge, we will by default have more people going like, what is this MagicMics thing? And they're talking about Magic stuff, and that's really cool because I like the movie and I want to know what Magic's about. So
then they'll tune in for 15 seconds and realize we're not talking about the movie anymore. But that's fine.
And they'll be like, oh,
because they clicked. It's fine.
That's great. We got a unique viewer or something. It's okay.
Perfect.
Thanks. Thanks for coming and hanging out. Anyway, so the Rolling Stone article was great. Really awesome. So we're going to go right now into a segment called Blast from the Past, where we talk about something that happened a long time ago, something that you may not have heard of, or something you should sort of check out yourself. And so I want to toss it off to Reuben. I want to talk about a guy who is known affectionately as PTR, and I was wanting to sort of explain what that means, who this guy is, and what he's most famous for.
Okay, so PTR is short for Peter. Just get past that. It's not the greatest nickname. And his name is Peter Szigeti. Peter Szigeti was on the Pro Tour for a good long time. He was a player. I'm not exactly sure where he originated from. Do you know where he was originally from?
I really don't.
I don't know, but he was one of these colorful characters from the Pro Tour. If you go to, if you go to a football game, you expect to see the super fan. If you go to a poker tournament, you expect to see Amarillo Slim in his cowboy hat and his snakeskin boots. You go to the Pro Tour, you expect to see Peter Szigeti with his shaved head, usually like some ridiculous jacket. There was one Pro Tour where he won like a white leather jacket with purple leopard print lapels.
Wow.
And stuff.
Wow.
It was he was a character.
All right, so he had to stay 100 feet away from these events.
Right.
Tell me why.
Right. So he had some antics. And there are several stories based on PTR's antics, and one of them has to do with a card called Searing Flesh. Searing Flesh is from Scourge.
I think so.
It's 6 colorless and a red, deals 7 damage to target player. This was in a draft. I believe it was a money draft or a 3v3. I don't believe this was during a sanctioned event. It may have been. Don't quote me on this. However, the story has been corroborated by many people. He has this in his deck. He's about to die. He's dead on board unless he draws Searing Flesh. He draws Searing Flesh. He takes the card. He stands up. He puts the card into the back of his pants and wipes and slams the Searing Flesh onto the table in front of his opponent.
Are we talking like it touched skin? Like he didn't.
Oh, it touched
Oh, more than that.
Lots of things.
We wiped our butt with a Searing Flesh.
Yeah.
This then led to a suspension. Of course, this was one of many suspensions.
Oh, yes.
And eventually, enough of situations like that ensued that he ended up getting a lifetime suspension ban from Magic the Gathering tournaments. The story goes that he was not allowed within 100 yards of any tournament site that was a Grand Prix or a Pro Tour. And so the story goes that you could find him 110 yards away, out front of the convention center, smoking and hanging out with all of his old friends from the Pro Tour.
Yep.
So PTR is like this legendary Bill Brasky figure in old school Magic, and I suggest that you go. I think that who has the article that wrote some of the cool stories about PTR? I think that it was on the Mixed Nuts blog, the Ted Knutson blog, had some cool stuff. I know that Patrick Chapin knew him fairly well, and there are some other.
And if you go to my archives in YouTube and you look up the Pro Tour Hollywood episode, I can't remember if it's part 1 or part 2 because it was 2 parts. You will actually see Peter Szigeti. We ran into him. Me and Chapin were like running around looking for him because we knew he was there. It's a Pro Tour. PTR is here somewhere. And we found him like walking into the hotel, and Chapin says something like, "We're telling stories of the $1 million Magic the Gathering like Black Lotus Pro Tour or whatever silly name they had at the very beginning," and and he's like, we were talking about your most famous story, and he was like, "Oh, the one where I wiped my butt with Searing Blaze." Yeah. Or Searing Flesh, and and it's just perfect. It's right after he says it. There's no hesitation. He knows exactly what he's known for. He embraces it. He takes it as his own. So you can find the man himself. But unfortunately, Reuben, tell me what happened after that.
So Peter Szigeti fell away from Magic. He was not around for a lot of the Pro Tours in the late 2000s. By the time we got to 2010, 2009-ish, Peter Szigeti was not seen anymore near the Pro Tour scene. I believe it was in 2011 that we learned that Peter Szigeti passed away. PTR died. And the details surrounding that, we actually still don't really know. The Magic scene at large doesn't really, it's not really public information, and I think that that's by design. His family probably didn't want it to be too public. It's a sad time when someone so young passes away so early. And
can I ask how old he was?
I want to say in his early 30s.
Early 30s, I would say 31, 32. And from what I understand, he had been ill for some time. with either, I think it was a heart thing, or it was like heart or liver or stomach or something internal. It wasn't cancer, but it was like some sort of heart disease or something like that. And that as a result of that, he had been in failing health for a little while, and that he passed away.
Yeah.
And that's super sad news for everyone, but it also led to a rebirth in the stories around that time. And everyone would be like, "Oh, I heard the PTR died," and someone would say, "Boy, you think you've heard all the PTR stories? Let me tell you, I got another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. You could never run out of them." And it was you need characters like that to make the legend of the game grow, and he is that guy. He is the old, let me tell you this story about this guy the guy that taught me magic had only heard of, right? And that's Peter Szigeti.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to put sort of the bittersweet bow on this one, Reuben, sort of send it off here.
Right. So the joke at the time that it happened was that Peter Szigeti would love that the last thing that people know is that he is the first person with a lifetime ban to have the ban lifted. He would love it.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
And so that's I think that's it speaks to how he was a bad boy. He was a malcontent. He was always a thorn in the side of WotC. But the players, most of the players, the people that knew him well, loved him. And even those that didn't appreciated his presence, even if they didn't appreciate him. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that he would really think I would think that that's funny if that were me, personally.
Absolutely.
So
All right.
I think that that's a good way to remember him.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to take it now into our final episode, or our final segment rather, that we have each week, and this is the finisher. So the infamous foil Goyf from GP Vegas Top 8 is on sale right now. Is auctioning right now on eBay for 5 figures, half of which is going to Gamers Helping Gamers, which is great. That's John Finkel's charity.
Well done.
I mean, seriously, if there was one way which I could think, how should he do this? How should he respond to all the criticism, to all the uproar, the outrage, the controversy, the wildfire of conversation that it brought? Like, as soon as he said it, I was like, oh my God, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Pascal's
brilliant.
a genius. I don't know if he came up with it in the minute that he had to pick the card, but afterwards he certainly found the right line of play.
Yes, he did. This was absolutely genius, and we are already in the 5 figures. It's like $16,000 or something right now. He is now going to make way more than if he had actually won the event. Obviously, it's a piece of Magic history. People are going to be talking about this stuff for years. And so the question is, for the finisher, is what's the next piece of Magic history to find its way online for sale, and what charity will it go towards? Erin?
Well, Gabriel Nassif will be auctioning off the one remaining Cruel Ultimatum that he had in his deck after sideboarding in the finals of Pro Tour Kyoto in 2009 against Luis Scott Vargas. Half the proceeds are going towards the Make-A-Wish Foundation, which he is clearly a benefactor of.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
with that.
I know that Craig Jones will be selling his world-famous Lightning Helix that he used to make the finals of Pro Tour Honolulu in 2006, with half the proceeds going to the St. Jude's Burn Unit.
Oh, that's nice. That's very nice.
That's where it's going.
Well done.
Yeah, for the kids.
And you guys should also be aware that Brian Kibler is selling a framed and signed Wolf token that he used to win Pro Tour Dark Ascension, most notable for killing John Finkel in the semis. Half of all of the proceeds of that token will go to the World Wildlife Fund, which has always fought to keep animals unblocked and roaming free in the red zone.
That's right. That's right. That's what they fight for, man. They fight hard. That's right. They do what they got to do. So we'll see if any of those pieces of Magic history get sold in the future. And if they do, we will talk about them on Magic Mics. And that ends another episode of Magic Mics. Thank you guys very much for joining us here live to discuss all things Magic. I want to thank my co-hosts Erin Campbell and Reuben Bressler. You guys for watching, and we hope that you follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, and do all the socially things that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/MagicMics live every Wednesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard. On Twitter at MagicMicsCast, and on Facebook at Facebook.com/MagicMics. Talk to us privately at MagicMicsPodcast@gmail.com. And follow the audio-only podcast at magicmics.libsyn.com. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching.